The Zorith ship cut through the black like a jagged shard of glass, cold and gleaming in the depths of space. Inside, the air felt like it was always teetering on the edge of something, a power waiting to explode. And yet, everything was still. Captain Solon watched the human through the reinforced glass of the holding cell. His skin was bruised, raw from hours of interrogation, but his eyes, those eyes were still defiant. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth, staining the dirt-streaked fabric of his uniform. He wasn't much to look at, this human, but there was something unsettling in the way he held himself. As though he knew something the rest of them didn't. "Can you explain this?" Solon's voice was sharp as he addressed his lieutenant, Vyra, standing beside him. Vyra didn't answer right away. She couldn't. She was too focused on the human, her mind trying to unravel the enigma before her. The laughter that still echoed in her head, the laughter after the shot, was driving her mad. She had witnessed the moment firsthand, the moment that shattered every preconceived notion the Zorith had about human fragility. The shot had been perfect. The cleanest kill any sniper could hope for. But the human hadn't died. He had only laughed. "He's a freak," Vyra muttered, her voice low but full of disgust. "No one survives that. No one." The human, still shackled to the wall, coughed weakly, the sound rasping through the silence of the room. He wiped his mouth, eyes flicking up to the glass. He saw them watching, and he grinned. "You're wrong," he croaked, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen far too much, yet carried on anyway. "I'm not dying today." Solon stepped forward, closer to the glass, his mind racing. The Zorith Empire had conquered entire systems, eradicated species, and reduced civilizations to dust. But humans? Humans were an anomaly. So strange, so tenacious. They defied every logical expectation. "Tell me, human," Solon's tone was cold, controlled, "what makes you think you can withstand what no one else could?" The man laughed again, this time with more strength. It was a deep, guttural sound, the kind that made the hairs on the back of Vyra's neck stand on end. "You're about to find out," he said, his voice full of something that bordered on amusement, and something darker, far more dangerous. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Vyra's hand tightened around the hilt of her energy blade. The crew had never seen anything like this before. A prisoner who didn't fear death. That was no ordinary human. That was a threat. "Enough of this," Solon said abruptly, turning away. "Prepare for his transfer. We'll break him." Vyra nodded, but her eyes lingered on the human, who hadn't stopped smiling. He wasn't afraid. That was the most unsettling thing of all. As they left the observation deck, a series of soft beeps broke the stillness. Solon's wrist communicator flashed, and he froze, eyes narrowing. A single line of text blinked at him. "Warning, ship integrity compromised." Vyra raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" "Check the external sensors." Solon's voice was taut. Vyra tapped a few commands on her wrist console. The response was immediate. "There's nothing out there, no ships, no debris. It's just, nothing." The human's laughter returned, faint, echoing through the walls. It reverberated as if the sound itself had power. It made the hairs on Solon's neck rise. Could this human, have done something? Without warning, the lights flickered, and then they went out entirely. The hum of the engines disappeared. A strange silence pressed down on the ship, and then a voice broke through the stillness, soft but unmistakable. "I told you." Vyra's breath caught in her throat. Her gaze snapped toward the holding cell. The human was still laughing. And the ship was falling apart around them. The ship trembled again. It wasn't the kind of shake caused by turbulence, or a malfunction, but something else, something far darker. A ripple of unease crawled along Solon's spine as he stared at the flickering lights above. "Get the backup power on," he ordered, voice taut. His crew scrambled to execute, but there was something about the urgency in his tone that kept them from meeting his eyes. Vira's expression was unreadable, her sharp eyes scanning the flickering monitors in front of her. She had worked alongside Solon for over 100 cycles, but this was different. The human's laughter, still echoing through the vents like a taunt, had become a constant presence, seeping into their minds like a virus. "Power's down to 40%, Vira muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. "It's a complete system failure. This shouldn't be happening." "No," Solon said, more to himself than anyone else. His mind raced. "This is no accident." Another violent tremor shook the ship. Panels buzzed, sparks shooting from some of the terminals. The hull groaned under the strain, like it was barely holding together. Outside the windows, the void of space remained unchanging, a constant, unfeeling expanse. But something had changed inside. Vira's eyes snapped to the holding cell, where the human still hung, now barely conscious, blood seeping from the wound. His laughter was quieter now, yet still there, reverberating in the hollow corridors. The human had been shot point-blank in the chest. Everyone had seen it. And yet, he hadn't died. He wasn't even close to death. Solon's fists clenched. There was no way one human could do this, no way he had that kind of power. "Captain, we need to," Vira started, but Solon cut her off. "Not yet," he said. "If we can't stop him, we need to understand him first." His voice dropped to a low, dangerous tone. "He's doing this. Somehow, he's causing this." "Impossible," Vira hissed, stepping closer. "You saw the data, Solon. His body, he shouldn't be alive right now." "I know," Solon growled. He turned sharply and stalked toward the central control room, where the crew had gathered in disarray, their efforts to restore power to the ship failing miserably. The human was more than a prisoner. Solon had underestimated him before, but now, he wasn't sure if anyone on the ship was going to survive long enough to make the mistake of underestimating him again. A sudden shift in the air made him stop in his tracks. "Captain," Vira said, voice tight with fear. "He's not just surviving. He's feeding off the ship. Somehow, he's hacking us." Solon's breath hitched. "No." Before he could respond, the central control room doors slammed open. One of the technicians, eyes wide with panic, staggered in, clutching his datapad. "The systems, there's a virus. It's in our mainframe." Vira's gaze snapped to the technician. "What kind of virus?" The technician's hands shook. "It's not a normal virus. There's something in it, something that's alive." Solon's eyes hardened. "You're telling me that human virus is alive?" The technician swallowed hard. "I don't know how, Captain, but it's spreading through our systems. Everything. The engines. The life support. We're losing everything." "Shut it down," Solon commanded. Vira immediately began issuing orders, but Solon knew, deep down, it was too late. The human had embedded himself into their ship, not with physical force, but with something far worse, something intangible, but far more dangerous. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to change, crackling with energy. The hum of the failing ship dropped into a deep, almost rhythmic pulse. Solon's heart pounded in his chest. Through the comms, the human's voice came again, calm, but dripping with that same unnerving amusement. "You're too late, Captain. You should have known what happens when you provoke humanity." The ship's outer hull groaned, and a sudden jolt sent everyone stumbling. "We're losing control," one of the officers shouted. The control room plunged into chaos as alarms blared, but Solon didn't move. He stood motionless, his mind working through the implications. "You can't stop it," the human's voice continued, now mocking. "You've already lost." Vira looked at Solon, her face pale. What is he really?" Solon turned, eyes narrowing. The human had become something more than just a prisoner. He had turned their ship into a weapon, their systems into his own playground. And they were powerless to stop him. "We need to deal with this now," Vira urged. "Before it's too late." Solon's lips curled into a grim smile. We'll see, Vyra. But first, we need to understand what it is that made him this way. Only then can we destroy it. The ship rocked again, harder this time. Solon could feel the panic rising, even from the crew. But in that moment, one thought burned through his mind with a savage clarity. The human hadn't just survived. He had evolved. And now, humanity wasn't just a threat. It was the deadliest species in the galaxy. The ship's tremors had become rhythmic, like the beat of a dying heart. Every moment felt like an eternity, as the energy drain worsened, and the crew scrambled to maintain any semblance of control. Solon could feel it in his chest, the suffocating weight of it all. He wasn't used to being vulnerable. He wasn't used to feeling powerless. But the human had changed the rules of everything. Solon's boots echoed through the narrow, dimly lit corridor, each step an affirmation of his resolve. Behind him, Vyra and a handful of the crew followed, their faces pale with fear but their eyes burning with defiance. The emergency lights cast long shadows on the walls, illuminating their hurried breath and tense expressions. They were heading toward the holding cells again. The human was still there, still alive, still laughing. The madness of it all gnawed at Solon's sanity. No one survived what he had endured. No one survived that kind of shot. Vyra's voice broke the silence. Captain, I don't understand. The data from the med scanners, it doesn't make sense. His body, it's regenerating at an exponential rate. I've never seen anything like it. Regenerating, Solon murmured, the word tasting strange on his tongue. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. How could a human regenerate like this? It was beyond the realm of possibility. But the evidence was right in front of him. The human was waiting when they arrived, hanging limply in his chains, his head slumped forward as though asleep. A deep breath rattled his chest, and then his lips twitched into a grin. You're getting closer, he rasped. But you still don't understand, do you? Solon's eyes narrowed. He had to know. He had to break this thing wide open, before it was too late. The ship was dying, and with it, their empire. They had to stop this, now. He moved closer to the cell, his boots silent on the cold metal floor. What are you? The words were low, controlled, but the rage behind them was undeniable. The human's eyes opened, slowly, as if savoring the moment. The smile didn't fade. I'm the thing you should have feared from the moment you first met us. Humanity's true face. Vyra stepped forward, frowning. You've infected our systems, haven't you? The human's laugh echoed once more, low and mocking. Not infected, Lieutenant. You think you understand? You think this is a virus, a simple infection? No. It's something far more profound. It's humanity. You'll see. Solon's hand shot out, grabbing the bars of the cell with a white-knuckled grip. Explain. Now. The human exhaled, like he had all the time in the universe. You think you've been studying us, cataloging us, dissecting us for years. But you've missed the key thing. The thing you'll never truly grasp. You look at us as fragile. Weak. But we are not fragile. We are adaptable. You can shoot us. You can burn us. You can break us, but we'll keep coming back. Over and over. And one day, you'll see what happens when you poke the wrong bear. Vyra shifted uneasily behind Solon, the air around them heavy with tension. This is madness, she whispered. He's toying with us. The human's lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. No, Vyra. I'm not toying with you. I'm showing you your future. A future where humans won't just survive. They'll dominate. And you, his eyes bored into Solon, you'll be the ones exterminated. Solon stepped back, his mind racing, heart pounding. Every word the human spoke felt like a knife cutting deeper into his psyche. What had they unleashed? What exactly had they provoked? Vyra's voice was quieter, her uncertainty more apparent now. Captain, if this human is humanity itself, Then we've made a terrible mistake. The hum of the ship flickered, a faint groan shuddering through the walls, followed by the sound of alarms in the distance. But this time, it wasn't a random malfunction. It was too coordinated, too precise. Solon, Vira said, her voice thick with urgency. It's not just the ship. It's everything. The entire Zorith fleet is being compromised. We're losing control of everything. The ship jerked violently. Solon stumbled but quickly regained his footing. A second later, the ship went silent. The lights blinked out again, and for a moment, there was only the sound of their breaths. Then came the voice. It didn't come from the human. It came from everywhere. It's begun, the voice said. It was calm. Too calm. Humanity is awake. And you've just signed your death sentence. Vira's face went pale, and she stepped back, her hand trembling slightly. He wasn't talking to us. He's talking to them. Solon's heart skipped a beat. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Humanity wasn't just a threat to the Zorith Empire. Humanity had already infected every corner of their civilization. And now, the human had unleashed something that could never be contained. The walls of the ship shuddered once more, this time with an intensity that rattled every bone in Solon's body. And in the distance, the dark void of space seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of something vast, something ancient. Humanity had awoken. And it would never be silenced again. The pulse of the ship was chaotic, a fractured rhythm now, as though it, too, had become aware of the impending doom. Solon's breath caught in his chest as the walls trembled again, this time harder, deeper. Vira had her hand on her console, her fingers trembling over the keys, but the cold sweat on her brow told him nothing was working. No more systems. No more control. The human's voice still lingered in the air, the words haunting, ever-present. Humanity is awake. The weight of it sat on Solon's shoulders like 1,000 suns. Captain, Vira muttered, her eyes darting across the blinking screens, we've lost half our fleet. Half. Solon's face went ashen. His fists clenched involuntarily. Not enough, he rasped. It's not enough. If they want war, they'll get war. He stared at the human, still slumped in the cage. His face was bruised, battered from the violent interrogation sessions, but his grin never wavered. He seemed unaffected by the chaos around him, as if all of it, every crack in the ship, every screaming alert, was simply a backdrop to some larger plan unfolding. You didn't believe me, did you? The human's voice was a rasp, but there was a sharpness to it now, a sense of power rising from within the wreckage of his broken body. You should have listened. Vira stepped forward, her voice icy with anger and disbelief. What have you done? This isn't humanity's power, this is insanity. The human chuckled, his eyes flickering toward her, his laugh too loud, too knowing. You mistake chaos for weakness, Vira. Chaos is freedom. You're not seeing the bigger picture. Humanity embraces it, because without chaos, there's no change. And without change, nothing survives. Solon's eyes narrowed. The words didn't make sense. Not yet. But something about them dug under his skin, gnawing at him. Vira hissed through her teeth. This is all just some twisted game to you, isn't it? You get us to play, and you. Play? Play? The human's eyes flashed, his voice suddenly fierce, cutting through her accusations like a blade. No. You're the ones who've been playing, pretending that your order, your perfect systems, could last forever. You're so afraid of the truth. That's the game. You've been playing with a lie. A lie. The word echoed in Solon's mind, resonating in the hollow space inside him. What if he was right? What if humanity had always been a seed, waiting to grow, waiting for the right moment to fracture everything around it? The ship jerked again, this time harder. Solon's vision blurred for a moment as the sudden wave of pressure nearly knocked him off his feet. The alarm screeched louder, a cacophony of destruction. Vira slammed her fist against the control panel. It's not stopping. They've hacked into every command module. All fleet coordination is compromised. We're trapped. No, Solon growled, his eyes locking onto the human. His pulse quickened. The human knew something they hadn't figured out yet. He was more than just a survivor. He was the key. What did you do? Solon demanded, his voice strained but steady. How did you get inside our systems? The human's grin widened, like a predator savoring a kill. It's not about how. It's about when. You're too late. The code was planted long ago. Humanity's presence has been growing, quietly, slowly, embedded in your systems, in your networks. When the moment came, we awakened. Virus lips trembled with frustration. But how did you access the Zoratha's protocols? How? The human cut her off, his voice turning sharp, laced with a cruel amusement. Your arrogance. You assumed you could control everything, but you never accounted for humanity's adaptability. It's in our blood. We change. We evolve. And that's the part you missed. Solon couldn't breathe. His mind spun with the weight of the realization. The Zorath had underestimated something they hadn't even known existed, something inside the very heart of humanity. A relentless drive, an instinct to survive, to break the rules, to push beyond boundaries until everything shifted. And it was too late. Outside, the stars themselves flickered, as if blinking in and out of existence. Solon felt the shift in the air, the shift in everything. Something was happening. Humanity was changing everything. A moment of sheer power, of unbridled chaos, was unfurling across the galaxy. Virus eyes filled with realization, then horror. Captain, the fleet, it's already happening. They're taking over. One system at a time. Solon turned to the human, his voice thick with dread. What happens next? The human's eyes gleamed. Humanity takes control. And you? You'll be the ones left behind. Out of time, out of options. Exterminated. Solon didn't speak. The truth of it hung between them, suffocating. Humanity was the hammer. The Zorath, their empire, their technology, was the anvil. And all that remained was the sound of inevitability, like the strike of a blade against a waiting throat. The door to the chamber opened. Virus stepped back, eyes wide with panic. We've got minutes, if that. But Solon didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the human, on the one who had triggered this unstoppable wave. This was the end. Humanity had awakened. And they were no longer playing by anyone's rules.